right, so today we're in Be Set Apart, part 12. Now, some of you are probably thinking, but Rabbi, it's Sukkot. Why aren't we getting a Sukkot message? This is a Sukkot message. Believe me, it's a Sukkot message. And you'll see how it ties in together. So Be Set Apart, part 12. Now, why are we studying this for all these parts? Is because Yahweh tells us that we are to be set apart as he is set apart. And we got to know what that means. What does set apart mean? The word would be holy in some Bibles. It'll be kadosh. But what does it mean to be set apart? And we know that it means to be consecrated, declared sacred, dedicated, or set apart for the service or worship of Yahweh. In other words, something that has got a special purpose, distinguishably, easy for me to say, distinguishably different in an open and discernible way than everything else that's being done. In other words, if I've got a set-apart item, like say a set-apart menorah or candlestick that has a separate purpose than all other menorahs and candlesticks, you are supposed to be a set-apart people, which means that you are supposed to be distinguishably different than all other people, because you should be dedicated, declared sacred, consecrated to Yahweh, all right? So we've been studying this now for 12 parts. We've been going through the book of Ephesians, the letter to the Ephesians. We're going to finish that up here in chapter 6 today, and you'll see how this ties together. Now, it starts off with children, obey your parents and the master, for this is right. Respect your father and mother, which is the first command with promise, in order that it might be well with you and you might live long on the earth. So we're going to tie this in immediately to Sukkot. So the third verse says that this is all so that you might live long on the earth. What does Sukkot represent? The millennium, leading into Shemini Atzeret, which is the forever. So that's what live long on the earth is ultimately pointing at. Yes, it's talking about living long on the earth like your fleshly life, but also living long on the earth, the eternal life. Because, by the way, it's all happening here. So when it says live long on the earth, you might be thinking, well, I don't live long on the earth, I want to go to heaven. Well, heaven's coming here, so good luck with that. Because it's all coming here. Read Revelation. It's all coming here. Revelation 21 tells you it's coming here. Now, there will be a new earth, a new heaven and a new earth, but the new Jerusalem's going to come down here, okay? So that you can live long on the earth. And so it starts off with this obedience thing, and there's going to be a little bit more about that whole obedience thing and the vertical structure. I know, here we go again, right? Okay, here in this chapter, and I think it's important in the Sukkot framework for us to understand. Okay, so let's say we're actually flowing through the actual events of time. Trumpets has happened, Yeshua has returned, things are being reconciled together with atonement, and the kingdom millennial time starts. What's going to be actually going on at that time? Well, there's going to be a lot of chaos and confusion. There's going to be a lot of turmoil. There's going to be a lot of imposing of authority coming from Jerusalem, from Yeshua on the throne, and those who he has in the first resurrection as his extensions going out. And the thing that will do us the best is to understand vertical support, vertical authority, vertical submission. Because whatever is not properly vertically aligned is going to get, I don't know what the right word is, forced to be. Yeshua is not going to allow any of that to be going on. Now, hopefully we've learned that now. We've learned that in the now so that we don't have to deal with it later in the little smacks. And I'm being gentle about that because he's got a rod of iron. I don't know how you get a little smack with a rod of iron, because even a little one's going to hurt. But he's going to give us those smacks and say, hey, don't go left, don't go right, go straight. Don't do that, do this, don't do that. And people are like, well, I don't understand all this whole do's, don'ts, but listen, Yahweh gave us the Torah, which is nothing but what? Do's and don'ts. He didn't give you a bunch of, well, see what you feel and listen to whatever you think his voice is and whatever you're going to interpret for yourself to your own destruction, really. All right, to your own pleasure that you're seeking. Everything in the covenant is do's and don'ts. There are 365 don'ts. There's 248 do's. Wow, you notice there's more don'ts than do's. If you look at the 613. And so this part of chapter 6 here, this part of this letter is addressing authority. And guess what is the most critical thing that's going to be happening when he shows up and he starts establishing his kingdom is what? Establishing vertical authority. And we have to be in a mindset and a heart to respond correctly to vertical authority. And if we're doing what we're supposed to do, okay, then we'll also have opportunities to walk in authority, and we have to know how that's supposed to look when we're in authority. Because, you know, the church got you going, and maybe some of the Messianics got you going about being, I'm going to be a king and priest. Some of you even think you're already that. Because people say we're kings and priests. Not yet, you're not. Right now, you're a mess trying to become Yeshua-like. Okay? You're a ball of flesh trying to transform into the King of Kings. And one day, when you are transformed and changed, you will be a kingdom of priests. You'll be a kingdom of priests. What are priests? Those who stand before Yahweh to serve him. Doesn't mean we're going to be doing temple service. The Levites have that role. And trust me, when the Ezekiel temple is built, they will still have that role. There is no replacement theology here. Of course, there's another priesthood that's talked about, the Melchizedekian one, and we will be amongst those priests. Those who stand to serve before Yahweh, but we don't have the temple service role. Now, I'm saying all of that because I want you to read this with me and understand it in the right context. This is why I think it timed perfectly to fall on the first day of Sukkot. Because day one of the millennium is going to be bringing authority into the world. You know what this is going to be? It's like Genesis 1, that first day, and what happened? The world was what? Tohu v'bohu. And then what happened to the chaos and the confusion? Yeshua was brought into it. It says, let there be light, and light was brought in. And we know Yeshua is the light of the world. Yeshua, the Word, the Torah, all these things were brought in to what? The mess, the confusion, the chaos. What do you think the world's going to be like on day one of the millennium? It'll be like day one at the beginning of creation. And so that light needs to come in. And we are going to be light bringers too, those in the first resurrection. He's going to expect us to be bringing that light, which means that we have to understand vertical. One of the things that Yeshua demonstrated better than any human being ever could or would was perfect vertical alignment. Because we all think of him as the coming king, but he thinks of himself as nothing but in front of the Father. He's the humble servant of the Father. He doesn't have any airs about, I'm the Messiah, and I'm sitting at the right hand, and I'm, you know. He says, I'm nothing. My Father's everything. He said, my Father's greater than me. Don't be all, he says, none are good but one. He wouldn't even let himself be called good. So he certainly wasn't carrying any airs about being the coming king. But I think he did was he took very seriously understanding what the immense responsibility that would bring. The immense responsibility he would have to bear being the King of Kings. To now be responsible for all creation. Because all, as it says, are his. It all belongs to him. And so ownership brings responsibility for what is owned. And so we need to do that as well. So let's go back now to chapter 6 and understand. So he says, children. Because you might read this and think, oh, I wish my kids were paying attention. No, you. You know what Scripture calls you? Children of Israel. I've yet to find, and I've read pretty much every verse more than once in this book, a verse talking about the adults of Israel. It always calls them the children of Israel. And I think that's because we tend to not have the maturity level we need to have. You know, I talked about in developing the character of Yeshua, that paradigm shift that needs to be made. And we've made several of them, but the one we haven't really made yet is the last one, which is the one from child to adult. We got to grow the bleep up. We got to grow up. And the hardest part of growing up is vertical alignment. Subjecting yourself to others' authority, submitting yourself under authority. Can we agree? I mean, keeping Shabbat's not tough, but keeping it the way the authority says to keep it, that can be tough because you don't want to do everything that you're told to do. I mean, sure, I can do Saturday instead of Sunday. Oh, but can you do it for 24 hours? Can you not go to work? Can you not just do your pleasure? There's a lot more to it than just Saturday from Sunday. Are you willing to subject yourself under authority? Well, your boss says you need to come in on Saturday. Well, that's authority. But your Creator says not to. That's a higher authority. Abba's watching to see how you respond to authority. Look, whether you want to like it or not, admit it or not, doesn't matter whatever feeling you have about it, you are always under authority. In other words, there is authority in your life. It's either you or somebody else. And it's either somebody you chose to be under or someone you allowed to take control, but you're always under authority. So let's not, make it sound like, well, I'm just my own man. Then you're under your authority. Nobody's not under authority. The question is, which is the right authority to be under? Being under your own authority, I think, is incredibly myopically stupid, okay? Because you can't see enough to know what to do, and you don't know enough to know what to do. You need to be under authority, an authority that knows what you're supposed to do, knows how to do it, knows all the appropriate things, knows what you shouldn't do, knows where all the landmines are so you don't step on them. Children, we're only on verse 1, the first word. Because you don't want to hear the second word, obey. Let me ask you a question, all you parents. When you tell your children something and you want them to obey, how do you feel about a discussion? Do you want to discuss what you just told them to do? Do you want an argument? Do you have any thought about, I'd like to sit and discuss this with them? No, you say, stop it, do this, go pick that up. And then they want to have a discussion. And you look at them like, no, go do what I said. You expect obedience, don't you? Why? Because you know it's what's needed to be done. And you don't want to argue about it. Okay, the Creator's not going to argue with you. Because he already knows he's right and you're wrong. Now, sometimes you can be right, but you're only going to be right when you're in alignment with him. But if it's him and you, and it's not and they're different ideas, he's right, you're wrong every time. Without exception. That's where your emunah, your faith, your trust comes in, bitachon, right? Your belief and your trust. You got to believe and trust that he is always right. And so if I'm not in agreement with him, I know who's wrong. It's got to be me. Can't be him. Oh, but he knows my heart. You know what? Your tongue should fall out when you say that. He does know your heart, and I don't know why that doesn't scare the you-know-what out of you. He knows you're trying to spin and make excuses and justify and whatever, rational lie to yourself. And you just knock that off. It's not going to get you anywhere but trouble. He says, children, obey your authorities in the master. It doesn't say that, but it does. In other words, as children, we are to obey the vertical authority that is appropriately in our life. If you are a child and you have a parent, that is your natural vertical alignment. Yes or no, right? Okay, so children are to obey your parents in the master, for this is right. So it's interesting they said in the master, though. So now, when he says in the master, is he really talking to 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 5-year-olds? No. Now you know he's talking to the adults. And when he's saying obey your parents, I think he may be talking about spiritually your parents. those that are parenting you through this journey, adult to adult. Because it says in the master. I've got a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old, and I can remember when they were 5 and 6. They didn't understand what it meant in the master. Or at 10 and 11, they barely understand it now. Well, one does, the other doesn't. But so what? It's got to be talking to someone who's covenanted, who understands relationship and says, obey your parents in the master. Interesting. For this is right. So, and somebody says, well, that doesn't sound right. That's not fair. I don't like that. No, he says, this is right. Appropriate, correct behavior. This is the right thing to do. Obey. Wow. See, a lot of you just want to have a discussion, have an argument and debate and see. No, he says you do. That's the covenant. Exodus 19. Go back and read it. There wasn't like he says and we'll talk about it. You know, there is a part where it says, Yahweh says, let's reason together. And the reasoning together is, why do you keep arguing with me? I'm right and you're wrong. That's the reasoning together. Okay? Let's be reasonable about this. I'm God, you're not. He rules the entire universe. You can't even rule your own life. You can't rule your own house. You can't rule whatever. And you're going to argue with the ruler of the entire universe. Holds everything together. Put it all in place, has the plan, makes it all happen, and you think you're smart relative to him. The pride and the ego is just mind-boggling, right? He says, verse 2, respect your father and mother, which is the first command with promise, in order that it might be well with you and you might live long on the earth. So he's talking now about commandment number 5, right? Honor mother and father. And in that commandment, it does say so that it might be well with you. So he says, respect your father and your mother. So now we're talking about those that have those roles in your life. Look, when you read the 10 Commandments, okay, and this is really important. And I wanted to do a teaching on this, and at some point maybe I will, just the idea of this 5th commandment. When you read the 10 Commandments, many of you who are above the age of child, as we would normally think that verse is something you just pass right through, or you only want your children to pay attention to it, but forget that it has relevance to you. Because after all, it's talking about children. It says, respect your mother and father. Some of you do struggle with that whole thing and then come to me because you think it means obey them no matter what they're doing. This is talking about covenanted people with covenanted people. So your uncovenanted parents who are trying to get you to do uncovenanted things, treat them with respect, but don't obey them. Now here it's talking about obedience and respect in the context of covenant to those that should be getting both. So now we're talking about obeying. I think we're talking about the same people, your parents, father and mother. They need to be obeyed and respected in this context. Not the context of just you were a child and now these are your birth parents and now you're 30 and your birth parents are trying to get you to do Christmas, Easter, or some other thing, and you're like, what do? I don't want to disrespect them. Well, do you want to disrespect him? So what you want to do is respectfully decline. Don't tell them that they're pagans and they're going to whatever. Just say, I can't do this. Look, even Balaam, okay, that, infamous, member of the journey out of the wilderness, right, who they ran into. Even Balaam said, I can only do what Yahweh says. I can't go beyond the word of Yahweh. Use that line. Your parents say you need to do this, that, or the other thing, and say, I can't go beyond the word of Yahweh. Yahweh said I can't. So I think we're going to see, because when we get down to later in the chapter, we get to the armor. Okay, this is the chapter with the armor of Elohim. In verse 12 it says, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and against authorities, against world rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual things. So this is a battle that we are doing as children of Israel, but we're adults. And so I think what he's talking about here, remember, end of chapter 5 was about husbands and wives. And I know you guys just loved that part. So, okay, because I got in your face quite a bit on that. Well, we're continuing now. We got husbands and wives hopefully understanding more about how they're supposed to do their thing. Now we're trying to get the vertical structure beyond just husband and wife, which means that you have spiritually parentage in this alignment. Those that you look to for the same types of things you look to a parent for. What do you look for from a parent? What do you look for from a parent? Protection and guidance. Provision. Okay? They're there to provide for you, to protect you, and to instruct and guide you. Well, there are people in the body for that too, aren't there? And I think that's absolutely what this is talking about here. I don't think he's talking to, a bunch of 6 and 8 and 10-year-olds. I mean, this letter wasn't to the Ephesian children, okay? He says, because now he's going to kind of keep going through this. He says, and you fathers, by the way, let's just get back to verse 3 for a second. You're doing this for a reason. It says, in order to. Obeying and respecting that vertical is in order that it might be well with you. Not doing this means it probably won't be well with you. It doesn't say, by the way, that it guaranteed to be well with you, because it depends on how well you do it and how much you do it. But if you can obey and respect, it will be well with you. But it's in order that it can happen. In other words, if you don't do it, it can't happen. It's not going to happen. Obey and respect the vertical. Your personal vertical is talking about specifically those that are parenting you. And by the way, a lot of you have people parenting you that are there by who knows how they got there. You might not even know how they got there, but they're the wrong people. You're grafted in, you're adopted in. Go find the proper adopted parent and get parented by vertically aligned, covenanted parents. I'm not saying go find an older couple necessarily. I'm talking about somebody who's in leadership, who's a guiding teacher, like chapter 4, the fivefold guys, the teachers, the prophets, the shepherds. And let them parent you. And by the way, parenting you doesn't mean treating you like a little child, because if you're an adult, you need guidance and instruction, and then we expect that you would then follow it, Deuteronomy 17 style. We're not going to coddle you and treat you like we would if you were 6 and 7 and 10, because you couldn't do anything then. Everything I give you to do now, you can do. You might not do it, but you can. You're certainly capable of it, but do you have the will to do it? And that's really the big question, isn't it? So he says, now we get into verse 4, having set that up. And you fathers, now he's talking to the ones who are guiding the first couple of verse people. You fathers, do not provoke your children, but bring them up in the instruction and admonition of the master. And again, we're not just talking about the literal, the pashat, a father with a child, a little child. We're talking about that parenting role in the body. He's saying, don't provoke your children, specifically to anger, is what the insinuation is in the way the Greek is worded there. In other words, don't provoke them to anger. So how would you do that? By mocking them and insulting them and attacking them instead of guiding and having empathy and sympathy, but with strength of admonition. So what's it mean to admonish? It means to warn or reprimand firmly, advise or urge earnestly, but you can do that with respect. You don't have to disrespect them and say, what's wrong with you, you jerk, this, that, or whatever. Don't you know, blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, you may not know this, but I think you're really heading in a bad direction. I want to give you some guidance, and I really strongly want to encourage you. You need to knock this off and stop that. Or you need to be doing this that you're not doing. This is for those who are spiritual parents. Okay? Now, by the way, if you don't know if you are any of these things, if you have not, maybe this will make it the easiest. If you don't have a title, you probably aren't. Because those are the people that people should be looking towards. Now, you may have a person in the growth of the body as you're growing who you've met, who's been doing this longer than you. They're almost like the right age to be like a parent to you. Yes, some of that falls to them too, but then those guys need to be listening to this part. Be careful how you handle those children. Because if you're going to parent them, you know, if my child goes out and does something out there that breaks the law, does something else, you know who they're going to come after? Me. Why? Because I'm responsible. It's my child. You guide that child, that adult child, if you're parenting, the spiritual parenting that we're talking about, you guide them wrong. They go out and do something they should do because you taught them to do it or instructed them to do it. Guess who's going to be blamed by him above? You. You guys don't ever take that serious enough. Not all of you, a lot of you. Because you just love to get in there and guide people and instruct people and straighten them out and tell them what to do. Man, I don't even know how you can have a conversation without knocking people out with that plank coming out of your eye. And you're trying to talk to people. And you turn your head and you're knocking people out. Big giant plank sticking out of your face and you think you're helping anybody. Like you got enough to work on you. Leave that to people who were called and given the job to do it. Generally, right? Okay? That's the safer way to go. So fathers, don't provoke your children, but bring them up in the instruction and admonition. So it said that admonition is a warning or a reprimand that's given firmly. So what's a reprimand? It's to express a sharp disapproval or criticism. So all of you need to understand this. He is telling these people, these fathers, don't provoke them to anger, but yes, you should be giving them sharp disapproval and criticism when they need to hear that. Here's the problem. You guys can't handle it. You can't. There's a lot of people not in these seats right now because they couldn't handle that from me, or they couldn't handle it from one of the other leaders. That is scriptural, brothers and sisters. There are supposed to be people in your life who can give you admonishment and reprimand. If you don't have anybody in your life that you will take a reprimand from, you are in trouble. You are likely to do things that you shouldn't do without anybody to stop you. You need somebody who can reprimand you. Have you ever seen a child that has no discipline, no parent disciplining them, right? You watch them going, their parent just lets them do anything. Is that child usually well behaved? No. Does that child usually get in all kinds of trouble? Yep. Why? Because there's nobody there to reprimand them. I've sat in congregations and watched a child doing whatever. Parent is sitting right there. And I'm looking ready to scream, grab your child. Go take that child somewhere and come back with that child crying. Okay? Because right now, everybody around that child is ready to cry. And they do nothing. And I look at them, and then if I'm there, because I have the authority, not you, I can go over and say, excuse me, deal with that. And there's a reason that child's out of control, because nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing anything to reprimand. Guess what? I don't care if you're 50, 60, or 70, or 30, 40, it doesn't matter. You're an adult. You need somebody in your life that can admonish, instruct, and reprimand you. Can we all agree we do things we shouldn't do? None of you is perfect, right? I got the right audience? Okay. Well, if you're not perfect, then who is in your life to tell you, hey, you're messing up right here. Stop that. Do this, do that. Don't do this. Is there anybody in your life that you can, or that you can even ask, hey, is this appropriate what I'm doing? Is this the right way to handle this? You need somebody to help guide you. We'll call that a parent, a spiritual parent. Spiritual meaning it's there to help you with the walk, in the way you're walking. I'm not talking about as far as like instructing in Torah. That you should be getting from me or from a teacher, in a ministerial instructor. You shouldn't just be getting that horizontally from each other. That's got to come vertically. But there still has to be someone in your life that can look at you and say, no, you need to stop that. That needs to be no more. It's vital, Look, when I counsel people for marriage, All right? People want to get married, so they think, well, I need to counsel about it. Well, but you don't even understand why you need to counsel. You don't need to counsel simply because maybe I'll tell you it's a good idea or a bad idea or some other thing because you guys almost always have your mind made up anyway, and nothing I say is going to change it. You're going to marry the person anyway. My encouragement is that you both have somebody that you both can take a reprimand from. There should be somebody that either one of you can go to with the other one, and that person who you trust and respect, right? What it says here, that you're willing to obey, can tell either one of you, you need to knock that off. You need to fix this. You need to stop that. I don't know how anybody gets through marriage with nobody to go to. I just don't. You have to have somebody you can go to that can help bring that all about. And by the way, that person should first start off making sure you're hearing each other. Because usually that's the first problem, that the two are not even hearing each other. They're talking, but nobody's hearing. Or what they're hearing is not what the other person's saying. And so that person you both obey and respect can tell you, you stop, you talk. Okay, now you're finished, good. You stop, you talk. Don't interrupt, don't interrupt. Then I can say, did you hear what she said? Did you hear what he said? Do you understand? Do you understand? Okay, what are we going to do with that? That doesn't work if you don't both have that person agreed to that you both submit to. The vertical structure is so valuable to you, okay? And most of you, I'm glad you clap, but most of you, I think it's just a thing I talk about because you think it benefits me. And it does benefit me, only from the point of view that those of you who do it are much less trouble for me. Really, okay? It doesn't benefit me in terms of power, crazy, and I'm in charge of people. No, it benefits me because the ones who listen are less problem. Because if there is a problem and I go to them, it stops. And they listen. But the value to you is just, I couldn't even put a value on it, it's so big. All of the things in your life that you could benefit from vertically aligning, having someone to go to, questions you could be asking, guidance you could be getting, reprimands you should also be willing to get. Look, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again now because it's critical. Because this is the Sukkot message, right? It's also part 12, but it's a Sukkot message. Do you not understand that when the millennium starts, more correction is going to take place than probably any time in history? More correction is going to take place than ever before. And the question's going to be, are you correctable? Now, some of you go, yeah, of course I am. Well, then how come you don't take it from me, you don't take it from other people? Oh, I'll take correction from him. No, correctable is correctable, not like just only him I'll take correction. You got to practice with those that you have here in the flesh to practice with. We're going to get that, by the way, here in the verses. That's why I'm talking about it. It's literally what Paul's talking about here. You have to practice with those available for you to practice with. Because I'll tell you, there are those of you that if I correct you, you turn into a defensive, angry mess. An offended, embarrassed, shamed, whatever. I can't tell you how many times elders told me he's had to do this, but he's had to talk to people who go to him all crying after me. And by the way, I'm not that harsh or anything. I just say, look, this is no good. And I say it says here that it's a reprimand that's done firmly. It's sharp disapproval or criticism. Sharp. Not just, by the way, I think you might want to consider not doing that again. It's more like, hey, stop. Don't do that anymore. That's wrong. That needs to stop right now. Hey, why are you over there? You belong over here. What are you doing over there? Don't do. There's some strong stuff coming from the vertical. Read your book. Does Yahweh sound like he's all like, oh, well, you know, if you guys, I think it might be a good idea if you listen to me, and maybe if you do. Do you hear any of that? He says, you guys don't knock it off. I'm throwing you out of the land. And you don't believe me and don't listen, I'm going to curse you 7 times. That doesn't work. Curse you 7 times more. And keeps going and going. And he says, and if you're not instructed by these reprimands, I'll curse you 7 times more. And you're all like, oh, I'm all excited to follow him. You think I'm hard? You are got a shock coming to you when the millennium starts. Yeshua is not going to be like you saw in the movies, looking like he came out of the 60s. Love, love, love. Look like he never did a day's work. His nails are all nice and he's all pretty. Guy's a carpenter. I'm sure he's very physically fit and muscular, did all that hard work. He wasn't all pale, white, and like he's never been a day in the sun. He worked outside. Look, this is the man who flipped over those tables in the temple. What do you think? He's going to be flipping over a lot more than tables when he gets here. Yes or no? Yes. All right, so you ready for that? Yes. No, you're not. Okay? You'll all say yes, but you're not. How do I know? Because you don't take it from me. You don't take it from him. And by the way, all of you who thought, oh, we'll go to Elder, it's going to be better. No. No, it was maybe the first week. Then after the relentlessness of it and it hit him, he's like, okay, I realize I got to do this the way Rabbi does. Because he comes to me with the same look on his face that I have on my face after a bunch of sessions with you guys going, it's nonsense. But it's only nonsense because it's the human condition. All of you are still overflowing with abundant nonsense. And some of it needs to just get smacked out of you. Okay, I mean, by life. He's going to allow life to smack it out of you until you finally go and get the vertical thing straightened out. And a lot of people out there are teaching against all this. I said, look, I don't care what you think. Read your book. It's all about authority. All of it, from Genesis 1 on. It's about a structure of authority. Period. And we have done it badly since Genesis 1. That's why we're still in this mess. And he's going to come and impose it. And if you don't want it imposed on you, figure it out now, and then you'll be a part of the ones going around imposing it. But not unless you got to figure it out now, though. Look, I have to find a way to reach in and purge out every last little speck of that Christian garbage that has you thinking that somehow you're in and you haven't gotten that alignment right. Okay? Nobody gets a forever suit if they're not trustworthy to be vertically aligned properly. Period. Oh, read your book. He is not going to can we agree he's not going to have any rebellion? You know what rebellious people do? They don't listen. You know what rebellious people do? They listen to another voice. You know what rebellious people do? Whatever they want, not what he wants. You understand what I'm saying? All of that's in here. And Paul's talking about it right here in Ephesians. And we have to get this figured out. Somebody comes up to you, and if your first reaction is to be defensive, you haven't gotten it yet. Your first reaction has got to be, and this is something that Elder will ask you when you come to him, because that's what I started off saying. People go and whine and cry behind my back. They go to him, and you know what he'll ask them always? Is what Rabbi said true? Yes. Then what's the problem? I don't like the way you said it. So what? It was true, then own it. I don't want to own it unless you say it the way I want you to say it. That's stupid. That's childish. That's baby stuff. I don't like the way you talk to me. The creator of the universe called Israel maggots. in Isaiah. Like, we're talking about the things that grow in dead things, not just like a little cute bug you might see on the ground. It's the kind of things you find in dead things. That's what he called them. Well, I don't like the way he talked to me. I haven't said anything anywhere near that harsh to anybody. But that's right there. I mean, I can tell you where that is if you want to see. It's the right page, left-hand column, middle of the page. 50, let's see, it'll be in 43 or 41. Let's give it to you. Let's see. It's in 41, verse 14. Do not fear, you worm, Jacob. That word worm in Hebrew means maggots that live in dead things. It doesn't just mean spineless. I mean, he's really hitting them. Isaiah 41:14. He says, because what he's saying is, you're fearing, you're not listening, you're trusting on yourself, you're trusting other things, you're not trusting me. All right, do you trust Yahweh? Yes. No. Do you trust Yahweh? Yes. All right. Do you believe what he says? Yes. Do you believe he works through human instruments? Yes. So then why don't you listen to them? Why don't you want to meet with them? Well, how do I know if you're a human? Well, listen, you'll have to figure that out. But some of you know, and you just don't do it anyway. Because you're still buying into that mainstream sort of, and even in the Messianic idea of somehow he's going to just talk to you personally. You're going to hear his voice, he's going to do everything work directly with you because you're so special, and now you're going to just get worked with directly. Everybody else got worked through Moses, and then through the other prophets, and then through the disciples and Messiah and everything else. But you're just going to work with him directly. How's that going, by the way? Is it working? No. I mean, I can almost understand it if you were doing it, it actually worked. It isn't working for any of you. And somehow you still have questions about everything because it doesn't work that way. Well, if you believe him, and you believe his word, and you believe this is his word, and his word tells you that he works through human instruments, and if you believe that the writings of the Brit are also inspired as the rest of the scriptures, and you believe that Paul's writings are inspired and all the rest of that, then when you read things like Ephesians 4, then you know that these guys need to be around to help us come into the unity of belief in Messiah and in unity of belief in general so that we are in the completeness of the measure of Messiah. Actually, I like the way he words it. He says, until we all come to the unity of belief and the knowledge of the Son of Elohim, to a complete, tamim, a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah, so that we're no longer children. We're supposed to grow up. Grown-up people, so you know what children do? They disobey, they run around, they try to insert their sovereignty. Adults recognize they need sovereignty and go find proper sovereignty to get under. Okay? He says, your children tossed about because you refuse to find one of these fivefold guys and get in alignment with them. And that's why you struggle. Listen to what Paul says here in chapter 6. He's going to get really strong. As if he hasn't already, right? By the way, for all of you, if he was here, you'd wish you were listening to me. I'm sure he would be just as strong or worse, okay? So listen. Servants, obey your masters according to the flesh with fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart as to the Messiah. Servants. So now he's talking about this should be our approach to serving authority in the vertical. Okay, he's not just talking about slaves or servants out there in the world. He's saying servants, those, right, we're slaves to whom we obey, whether Elohim or Hasatan or self. When we do the mikvah, what do I have you guys declare? That you are renouncing all the other authorities, Hasatan, self-sovereignty, and the kingdoms of this world, to come fully under the authority of Elohim and Elohim alone. Right? Those are declarations that you make when we mikvah. Do you mean them? And how does that work in terms of his appointed people, the anointed and appointed people that he gives you to admonish you, to instruct you, to guide you? Servants, obey, there it is again, your masters, So he's saying with respect, look, Sarah was happy to call Avram master. Why? Because of respect for him and his position. So master is not just, I have authority over you. It's a respect for your authority. I respect you as having that master authority over me. Obey your masters according to the flesh. When he says according to the flesh, he means obey your masters that are here in the below. Okay? Don't do it in a fleshly way. He's saying obey your masters down here, right? We've got the above and the below, the heavenly and the earthly, the spiritual and the fleshly. Okay, all different ways to say the same thing. He's saying, servants, obey your masters that are down here. He says, with fear and trembling in the sincerity of the heart as to Messiah. So, because some of you ask me, what does this mean when I'm at my job and everything else? Well, yes, look, when you're at your job, how you treat any authority does demonstrate to him how you treat any authority. Okay? I know a lot of you may know this, maybe you don't. I was a sensei, I was a martial artist, I was a teacher. And I always taught people when we taught the martial arts class, how you practice is how you do. So if we're going to practice always pulling that punch an inch from somebody's face, in the real world, you're going to pull a punch an inch from his face. So we put on equipment to make sure we can actually hit each other. So we're not pulling the punches. We're not pulling the kicks. So we actually know the right way. As you practice, that's how you do. Can we all agree? So any authority you interact with is practice. Ladies, I tell you all the time, you have a tremendous advantage on your husbands. Because if you are married, you have a built-in opportunity to practice. Because you are in a relationship that is vertical. Guys don't have it as easy. You actually have to go look for someone to get under. And then you have to do it. And I have to tell you, it is, I want to find the right word without being too offensive. It's pitiful. It is sad and pitiful, the percentage of men that are willing to come and seek out coming under authority. What's even more pitiful is the number of ones that do, but don't really mean it. And as soon as it comes into play, they cave, collapse, and leave. But they claim they want to come under authority until it happens. That's even more pitiful. And you guys out there need to own it. If you do not, listen, I don't care if it's me, this isn't about me. If you are a man and you do not have a man in your life that can slap you around and tell you to knock it off, I mean in the right way. You understand what I'm saying? Then you are potentially in trouble. You are going to end up in a problem. You are going to end up in a ditch. You need a man in your life that you can have that has that level of authority to grab a hold of you. I have a few men in this congregation that are like that have that authority. You know what they'll do? If I say something, they'll come to me and they'll say, Rabbi, I didn't like that. I don't know what that was all about, but I need you to straighten me out because I know you're right and I can't see it. That's a man. Okay? That's a man. His first reaction wasn't, I was wrong, like meaning he was blaming somebody else. His first reaction was that he might not have been right. He could have seen it wrong. So he came to me and said, I'm mad. What you just did, it wasn't even done to him, just something he saw me do. I need you to help me. And we sat down and fixed it because he didn't have the right perspective. There were things he didn't know. But he was a man. He came and asked to be straightened out. He knew the problem was in him. A couple of you do that. Very few. Your first inkling is going to be, that guy's a jerk. That guy thinks he's all powerful. He's a narcissist. He's a control freak. He's a dictator. He's a tyrant. That's all you're going to say to the fact that somebody said something you didn't like or told you no. Well, that gets them the best. Children don't like it any more than adults do, right? You guys think, this child, once they never take no. You guys don't either. You're still going to do what you want. And I'll look at you sometimes and say, why'd you come to me? You're still going to just do whatever you want, so why are you bothering me? You're wasting my time. I don't care. I don't care, okay? What do I mean by that? I don't care if you don't care. If you ask me, I care tremendously about what I give you and about whether or not you do it. If you don't ask me, I can't care. If I care, I'm only going to be miserable and depressed and frustrated all the time watching you hurt yourself. Okay? So if you want to go off and do whatever you want, and you think, oh, I'll show Rabbi, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. Because it can't. There's no way to function in this role if I let it do that. However, if you ask me, and I give you guidance, I care what I gave you. I care about that tremendously. It's important to me that I give you the best, accurate, appropriate guidance because, and I love when you guys come up to me, and I appreciate it a lot, but it's always funny to sometimes the surprised look on your face that when you come to me and tell me what I said worked, or exactly what I said would happen, happened. And then you look at me like why I'm not all excited or impressed with that. Why would I be impressed? I expected it to work, and I expected it to happen. I'm pleased. I'm not like, wow, it did work. I'm like, I only gave it to you because I had full confidence it would work exactly the way I gave it to you. All right? I got Mark in the back here. He called me. He was in the hospital. I told him he was going to be fine, and then he was fine. Well, how did you know that, Rabbi? I don't know how I knew it. And by the way, I'm never going to tell you that unless I know. And some of you are like, but when I called you, you didn't tell me anything. I don't say it very often, but when I do say it, it's always right. Now, if I don't say it, it doesn't mean you're not going to be fine. Don't get nervous. I've only said it to 2 or 3 people ever, Rabbi Tom being one of them, Mark being one of them, because I was inspired that they needed that at that moment, and I had the confidence that it was the right answer. Okay? So I don't want you, if you contact me and I don't say it, don't mean that, oh no, I'm in trouble. Okay, maybe Abba just didn't feel like you needed to get that from me. He wanted you to go through your own struggle with your trust and belief. All right? For whatever reason. But when we give you instruction, those in that fivefold, we have complete confidence that we're giving you the answer that works. And so you should not be surprised. We certainly aren't when it works. We love hearing that it did, because you know what we're hearing when you tell us that? Not that it worked, that you did it. That's what makes us excited, is that you did what you were told. Or you stopped doing what you were told to stop doing. Because that doesn't happen a lot. Billy and I are often talking about nobody's listening. Now, that's not true. A lot of you do. But a lot of you don't. And they just look at me like, you know, if either one of us gives you something to do, either one, doesn't matter, or Rabbi Tom, if you're given something to do by the leadership, and you come back to us, I promise you one of the first things we're going to ask you is, did you do what we told you to do? And if you didn't, we'll probably tell you, then go back and do that. Or if that's already too late to do and it's already gone badly, whatever, we say, well, this you'll know now for next time. You didn't do what we told you to do. By the way, I don't think there's a single testimony in here where somebody did not do what we told them to do and it went well. Matter of fact, I've got a lot of testimonies where people did that, and I'll tell you that was a bad idea. It did not go well. Not going to have them raise their hands, but there are people here that would be happy to tell you, yeah, Rabbi told us to do this, and we didn't do it, and it blew up in our face, and now we listen next time. And the next time when they listened, it went well. That's the way he designed it, okay? I'm not trying to say anything to say, look at me, I'm so great, I can help you. No. I'm saying he put me here to help you, let me help you. Amen. You know. There's a reason he's given me the bandwidth and capacity to counsel 6 hours a day, almost every day. Which, by the way, I never wanted to do. I hated doing in the beginning, and that's why he made me do it. Oh, you don't want to do that? All right. Now you're going to do it 6 hours a day. Now, I have to tell you, the reason I didn't want to do it, and I hated it so much in the beginning, really wasn't any other reason than I didn't know I could do it. I didn't know I had an anointing for it. I didn't know I had any gifting for it. I felt the pressure of, what am I going to tell these people? Now I love doing it because I know he gives me the insights. And when I say insights, I mean people who counsel with me and watch me and sit there and go, how'd you get that? Where'd that come from? And I say, I don't know. It just comes. And the person looks at me like, that's exactly what I needed. And what should have looked like it was going to take an hour took 10 minutes and we're done. That's the anointing. Okay, it's not that I'm so great at this and have any training at it. He gives me that discernment to know this is the actual problem. And we take that little thing and we fix that and everything else fixes. Okay? And some of you have been in those counsel sessions, you know what I'm talking about. But that doesn't happen if you don't trust, obey, and give it a chance. All right? So he says, servants, obey your masters according to the flesh, those who you have down here in the below. Do it with fear and trembling. There's a lot of you that do not respect your leadership. You're way too casual. You do not have any awe, respect, and fear properly of your leadership because it's about the mindset and the approach. I don't mean intimidated. I mean having a right, respectful awe that that person has been put there to bless you, help you, serve you. Some of you are like, but Rabbi, you scare me. That's dumb, okay? That's something going on in you. There's no reason I should be scary to anybody. I hear all the time, oh, you're so scary. You know what you're afraid of? You're afraid I'm going to tell you something that you don't want to hear that you already know you're going to hear. And a lot of people tell me when they do finally come and I do say it, they go, that's why I didn't want to see you. Because I went and told them what they knew I would. It's like the person that doesn't want to go to the doctor or the dentist because they know they've got a problem, but they're afraid to find out that they have a problem, but you already know. So might as well go find out what it is and get it fixed. Person's mouth is all in pain and all this other stuff. They probably have a cavity or an abscess or something, and they're afraid to go to the dentist. They go, why? Because I'm afraid they're going to tell me I have a cavity. Well, what do you think you have? A cavity? Well, then go. My marriage is having all these problems. Okay, well then you're going to come to me and I'm going to help you understand what those are, why they are, and if you can fix them, if you want to fix them. Or whatever other part of your life is all upside down, inside out, and screwed up. That's what we do. But you got to come with fear and trembling and in sincerity of heart. He's saying, servants, obey in this manner. Come with fear and trembling. That's an awe and respect for the authority. And he says, and do it in a sincere heart, where you're coming sincerely ready to deal with your stuff. You've heard me say this before, I'm sure. Everything in your life that you struggle to fix that just doesn't seem to go away is because there's some part still that you enjoy about it or desire about it, which is why you're not really fixing it. Whatever it is that you have not overcome, you got an addiction, you got cigarettes, drugs, pornography, gambling, whatever. It's because there's some part of that you still like. You're playing out there, you're a player, you're cheating, you're doing other, because there's some part of that you still like. You're not really working like you could, and you're doing all this lazy stuff because you don't really want to work. You haven't dealt with that lazy issue. You got to own your problem. And so then you come to me, and I tell you, I've had a couple of people come to me, and all I kept saying over and over again, every time they said, what does this and this, I said, you need to get a job. Oh, and all these excuses, you need to get a job. And then more excuses, you need to get a job. Or 2, or 3. Okay? You need to get a job. I have an equivalent of 3 jobs, because I work at least 3 shifts. 1 job. Although I really have multiple jobs. I have a counseling job, the teaching job, the running the ministry job. And praise Yah, I've got the capacity to do all of that and not fall on my face. It's the elder who's always like, you have to go home now, Rabbi. Which is him saying, I want to go home and I can't go till you do. He's admitting it now too. Because if I'm here, he'll stay. And if he tries to leave early, I call him a slacker anyway. And he looks at me, it's 11 o'clock. Slacker. Okay? Let's look at the rest of this. So he says, fear and trembling, sincerity of heart. Then he says, not with eye service as men pleasers, or lip service. We call it more like today, be more like lip service. We talk the talk, but we're not going to walk the walk. Oh, I support you, Rabbi. I believe you're the anointed, appointed. I believe, but then you don't do anything that demonstrates that. Because you want to please people to make them think that you have that relationship. Let me just throw this out there because it doesn't really fit into this, but it does. Some of the people watching, maybe, some of you will leave eventually. Some of you have already left. Some people have left, all because they don't seem to understand the relationship they can and should have with me. All right? Recently, somebody left, and really because they thought we were going to be like best buddies. And the people come and sit in the counseling thinking, oh, I watch your stuff, and we're like so alike and everything else. And I'm like, good. Have a nice day. I don't have time for that. If you know me, I'm not a social person. I'm not an introvert by any means. I'm just not a social person. I don't sit around and just let's hang out. Unless we're going to talk about fixing your life and Torah and everything else. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to do that. I only want to do what I do. Because some of you say, well, I've seen you at we go to the diner after, sundown, after services, after Oneg, we'll go out and eat, and they'll see me in there talking to people for 2 hours. And I'm talking about them asking me questions that are rabbi stuff. If it's not rabbi stuff, you'll see me doing this. I'll be on my phone, just sitting, waiting for somebody to need me to do rabbi stuff. Everybody else is talking. Because I don't do that stuff. It's not me. I don't like it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm not good at it. Okay? You need me to be your spiritual parent, to be one of these advising, guiding, admonishing people. You need me to be one of those fivefold things. You're a rabbi, your teacher, your shepherd, your prophet, whatever. You need me to be one of those guys. I know rabbi's not listed in there, but rabbis do a lot of those roles. But as far as socially, I've got one best friend. He's here. Okay, you guys all know him. We talk on the phone occasionally. We see each other at events like this, and maybe once or twice a year other than that, and that's it. And even then, we don't even hang out that much because he's got his stuff to do and I've got my stuff to do. If you're looking for that relationship, find it with somebody sitting in a chair nearby. Lots of them there that are happy to have that relationship with you. So don't get offended when it doesn't happen with me. Nobody gets that. Even my best friend doesn't really get that, okay? We don't spend that much time because I don't have that kind of time, and that's not the relationships that I'm built to do, okay? So just understand, because some of you are thinking, I'm going to come, and boy, we're just going to hit it off because our personalities, blah, blah, blah. Not happening, okay? And it's nothing personal. I don't want to do that with anybody, okay? I don't. I only want to work and serve. Okay, that's what I consider work. That's all I want to do. I'm here all day Sunday. Could be my day off. I'm here anytime. I'm here. An elder will say, I looked at the camera system and everything. Why were you still there at 11:30? Everybody else went home at 5. I had stuff to do. And if I do go home, I'm doing it there. And some of you are like, oh, but Rabbi, you need a break. No, I like doing what I do. This is my break. There is no break. I just love doing this all the time. I could do this all day, every day, all the time. And I'm as happy as can be. All right? So don't think that way. Oh, you're going to burn yourself out. I haven't come anywhere near my capacity. So I got a bunch of people who used to be like, all afraid I was going to burn myself out. You have no idea the bandwidth I have, okay? I monitor my bandwidth. I'm not going to burn myself out. There are times when I need to sleep in, and I'll tell Billy I needed to sleep in. When he wonders why I didn't call in, because I usually call in and check on things early in the morning. He's the morning person. I'm the night person. Between us, we covered almost 24, okay? So I take care of myself. But every minute that I'm awake, pretty much, that's what I'm focusing to do. Yeah, I goof off here and there because I need a little goof off time. But that goof off time isn't going to necessarily be socializing and hanging out and grabbing a beer with somebody. Okay? I go on vacation on a cruise and I bring my work with me. And you're all looking at me, you're incredibly stupid and crazy. Yes. You're weird. I do. Those who've been on the boats with me know I bring my stuff with me. I just want you to leave me alone. You do and play and have your fun, and I'm going to sit here in the buffet near the ice cream machine, and I'm going to do my work. But the thing is, on the boat, nobody needs me for anything, so I don't get interrupted. That's why I come in, by the way, on Sundays. We're closed officially, which means I get to work mostly uninterrupted. And so I get a lot done. I like working between midnight and 3 in the morning because nobody bothers me, uninterrupted. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there because some of you have this wrong idea about how our relationship's going to work, okay? I don't do those kind of relationships. It's nothing personal. Nobody has that relationship with me, not even my best friend. Just get that, okay? All right. Now, back to Paul. Because we're still here in chapter 6. Wow, it's already been over an hour. All right. He says, so you're not going to do this with this lip service, eye service, as men pleasers. He says you're going to do these as servants of Messiah, doing the desire of Elohim from the inner self. So what is it that you're doing as servants of Messiah? You're going to interact with those here in the below, knowing you're doing it to the one in the above. How you practice is how you do. All right, so you're going to practice obeying your masters in the flesh, those down here who have flesh, who have the role, appropriate role of master, whom you have fear and trembling and sincere heart to serve, because you're doing it as to Messiah. Because why? Because these people, if you've picked them correctly, represent him. We are extensions of him. Okay? What do we refer to Yeshua as often? As the right hand, right? Right? Yeshua being his right hand? What's that mean? In other words, it's his extension to do his work on the earth. And Yeshua's not here now. So guess what? He has other human beings to be his right hands, his extension here on the earth. Amen? So when we do this, we are to render service to these people with pleasure as to the master, not as to men. So even though you're doing this to the men in the flesh here below, you're doing it as to the above, not as to men. In other words, when you interact with me, you should be interacting with me as you would interact with Messiah. If you believe I represent him. If you believe that I am an extension of him, which the fivefold people would be. So the question then goes to you. Really, not the question. The obligation goes to you for you to find fivefold leadership to do this with. That is your burden. Nobody can come to you, run from the guys running around saying, I'm the whatever, and you need to all come to me. I've never said that. If you come to me, you need to do it this way. You need to figure out who I am in your life, if anything, and if it's anything, and it's this, then do it this way. If it's not, go find one. Paul thinks you need one, and it says until, and the until hasn't happened yet. Because we're not all yet in the unity of the belief of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim to a perfect man, etc. That has not happened. So these guys are still around somewhere, not the actual ones he's talking about here, but people doing these roles are around. Find them. And by the way, it's not necessarily 5 people. You can find one person doing all of it, or 2 people doing all of it, okay? And they split it in some way. I do all of these things. When elder shepherds, I think he does a better job because he has a way of communicating that compassion and love for the people better than I do. All right, that's more his thing. He has blue, I don't, okay? It helps. Man, look, you're looking at a handicapped person. When we did the personality thing, and I was missing 2 of the 4 colors, that's handicapped. So why don't you understand that when you interact with me that you're dealing with someone who's handicapped? Have patience with me, I'm broken. Okay, I'm almost all one color, missing 2 of them completely. So, thank you, Rocky. Rocky's like, we still love you, Rabbi. But you know what? To do what I do, I don't think you really could do it the way I do it or the way it's needed unless you had that much red. And we're missing some of those other things a little bit. There's just no way. I watch other people struggle to do these things who have the other colors that they get too caught up in their emotions and they get too upset, frustrated, or disappointed, or whatever, and it's hard to do this. Okay? Anyway, let me look at the clock. We're already running here. Let's see where I want to finish. Well, you know what? We'll just finish there. That was almost perfect. Okay? So, as we're going through this, he's saying, look, You are to render this service with pleasure as to the master and not to men. Let me just finish with the last part here in verse 8. Knowing that whatever good anyone does, he shall receive the same from the master, whether he is slave or free. In other words, if you're doing good to that person in the below who you recognize as a master, as someone you should be obeying, whatever good you do will be scoring those points in the above what you're doing down in the below. You're going to receive the same from the master, how you treat the master in the flesh. This is a promise from him. This is Paul explaining. This is how it works. By the way, that's what an anointed, appointed person does. They explain to you, this stuff that's in here, this is how it actually works. The stuff that you're doing and all these things that you know about, let me show you how it applies in your life and how it works. So we'll call these, that's what we call these the inspired commentaries. Basically, these are letters that Paul wrote. There's other writings that say James or Peter wrote and John wrote that were more just, letters to the dispersion, but they're the inspired guidance and admonitions. And by the way, there's a lot of strong admonitions and correcting and criticizing that's done in some of these letters. That's inspired for you to understand all this stuff. This is how it applies where the rubber meets the road in your life. So you all need to understand vertically saying and how that works on the level you are right now in your life, in this world, so that you do it right when that world comes into this world and Yeshua shows up and the kingdom gets started. Amen? Amen. Father, we come before you, and Father, we're just so overwhelmed and blessed to know your way, your will, your desires. That, Father, it's your desire that we can practice and learn proper vertical structure. That we can learn the blessing and benefit to us when we come into alignment with that structure with you at the top. A structure that's built from and emanating from you and built on you. And all of it is you when done right. So, Father, we are endeavoring to do something that has really not been done in most of the last 6,000 years, which is to try to structure ourselves your way and function in that structure your way. This is where the body, the people of Israel, all the way through to the beginning, went sideways. It started with Chava and Adam stepping outside of the vertical. And that's been a problem ever since. We want to have that sincere heart. We want to be able to take correction. We want to then take that correction and use it as the driving motivation to change. And that change being a change from who we are into what you are. That transformative change as we become more and more Yeshua-like. Father, give us a soft enough heart to receive. Take that stony heart, make it flesh, so that it can be soft enough to receive from you, to submit to you. Soften up the stone of our hardened necks, the stiff neck that we have, and make it flesh so it can bend. So it can bend to you, to your will, to your desire. Father, we want to be obedient to you, and we realize that we need to practice that here in the below. And for all of those that have an opportunity to be above anyone in that structure, may we do it in a Yeshua-like manner. And any of us that are below any in that vertical structure, and all of us are in the middle, so you're above somebody and below others, may we also be below in a Yeshua-like manner. Because the only one that's not in the middle is the Father. Yeshua showed us how to be above and how to be below inside the structure. We need to emulate that. And Father, we ask you with your patience and your compassion and your mercy to guide us. And you know what? Give us strong criticism, sharp admonition, admonish us, show us the way, be uncompromising. We don't want to be kind of like you. We don't want to be sort of like you. We want to be like you. And so, Father, please, without any hesitation, we're not that you wouldn't do it. We are asking openly. At least I am for everybody. Hopefully you all agree. We'll see when we say amen. We are asking that you would do this for us, regardless of how we may respond initially, because we know we need it. So, Father, we thank you, we praise you, and give you all glory and honor in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen.